Hey everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with our draft week extravaganza. It rolls on with day number, 116, whatever this is. Every time is weird in the Corona time, or as my friend called it, BC.
Today's Thursday, right?
What is it, Thursday? Yeah.
I think so. I think
It's
today's Thursday.
It is draft day, everybody. It is draft day. That's the important part. You know him. He's Scott Reichel. He's my partner in crime here at Winners and Whiners. We got a big show lined up. We've kind of dissected this draft from every angle possible. We're going to talk about some possible sleepers today and some possible sleepers. Well, some actual sleepers throughout history. Some of the biggest swings and misses of teams not picking up on certain players, and they were steals later in the draft. And Scott, I would be remiss if I did not promo our next two shows coming up. We've got a pretty exciting time. We've got tomorrow. You're going to have. Well, why don't you tell us who we're going to have tomorrow, Scott?
Yes. So tomorrow we're going to have Dave Mason from Bet Online. He's going to recap some of the props and how the books made out on specifically round one of the draft. They had some props available for the later days, but of course, most of the action's coming in on the first day for today. So we figured we might as well ask him how the books made out. Where the books definitely won, where the books definitely lost, stuff of that nature. So look forward to seeing that tomorrow. And you want to tell us about our guest on Saturday?
I do. Winning Willie. If we had Willie on last week, and Willie, he's kind of rubs shoulders with some relatively famous people. We're going to have safety special team player extraordinaire JT Gray of the New Orleans Saints on Saturday. He's going to be talking a little bit about what his draft experience was, and he's going to give it from a little different perspective because he was an undrafted free agent who went on to have a nice rookie season there for the Saints. He ends up he's a very, very integral cog on the special teams. He was the second-team All-Pro special teams player. So we're going to be talking to Willie, and we're going to be talking to JT Gray of the New Orleans Saints. So, yeah, it should be a pretty fun couple of days coming up, and I did I have made a few draft prop bets, as I'm sure everybody has, and I watched and I listened to Dave Mason on another program saying that they're getting 8 to 10 times the draft action of any previous NFL draft. So we should have a lot of fun questions for him. Scott, you ready? You got any last minutes, any props that pop the right way for you? Any draft action that the numbers are have become more attractive to you since we last talked? Any last minute bets people can throw down?
Well, I actually added a little bit of arbitrage the other day. Of course, that line's not available anymore, but it actually involved Jacob Fromm. I believe it was Fox Bet that had over 61.5 draft positions, and DraftKings had under 68.5 draft positions.
Okay.
So I got a middle of about 7 spots there.
And
I mean, of course, that was available for a little while. Then Fox Bet updated it to roughly 66. So the arbitrage is basically gone, but I got in before it was too late. The issue you have, though, with some books is the limits. Some books just kind of, even though they let you bet it, they don't let you bet as much as you want, which is always a very frustrating part, especially if you are setting up some arbitrage situations. But either way, I added that to my list. Very interesting number here, though, for the New York Giants #1 pick as well as the first offensive lineman taken. I'm assuming you were also aware of this. There was a ton of steam yesterday with Jedrick Wills out of Alabama potentially going #3 if the Dolphins were trading up to 3, and there were rumors that the Giants were all over Wills with the 4th pick. Wills was roughly -120 at some point to actually go be the first offensive lineman taken to go to the Giants. Now Wills is +150, and Wirfs is now -140. So I don't know if that was a smokescreen or if something happened, but there was a ton of movement on Wills, and then there was a ton of buyback on Wirfs. So I don't really know what's going on there.
Yeah, I do wonder, because normally a lot of the steam on the draft, it comes from, people talking with the front office or statements that they've released or, people with inside quote unquote knowledge. And I don't know where it's coming from this year. Okay. First of all, I want to back up, Scott, because you and I, we talk a lot about arbitrage. We talk a lot about middling, but I know we have listeners out there that are all over the spectrum of experience as far as sports betting goes. So real quick, tell us what arbitrage is.
So arbitrage basically means that you bet both sides of a given game with some overlap towards both. So what that basically means is that take the Jake Fromm example I just gave you, right? One book has over 61.5 and the other book has under 68.5, which means, in other words, it's impossible to lose both. Because either he's going to be less than 68.5 and potentially less than 61, or he's going to be over 68 or so, and which is going to be over 61. However, you have this gray area in between, which is from 62 to 68, and arbitrage means that you have a chance to hypothetically hedge your bet automatically with a shot to win both.
Okay, very good. And it's a gambler's favorite situation. It is a no lose bet.
Basically, I mean, the way that
you'll lose the juice.
Yes, you lose the juice sometimes, but you said basically the way that it sets up is that if they land within that threshold, you're basically paying like $20 for a 10-unit bet, like to win. You know what I mean? To win 10 years. Like if you have $20 and then you win both. I mean, okay, I'll rephrase. If you win one out of the two, you pretty much lose $20. But if you win both, then you probably make around $200.
Right.
So you definitely have the risk reward is phenomenal in terms of ratio, but that also applies for individual games where, for example, if you take a team to win -2 and the line climbs up to -6, if you bet the +6 on the other side, then it's the same situation because you have -2 on one side for team A and +6 on the other side for team B. So you automatically can't lose both, but you can win both.
Right. So you're basically getting like 20 to 1 on your money. So you're probably going to hit, because you're looking at a range, because obviously a point spread is going to be within a certain range. It's probably going to be, I don't know, a 40-point range, let's say, from a 20-point loss to a 20-point win, and that's probably extreme. So then you have to look at the odds when you've got an ARB down to maybe a 5-unit, a 5, you know what I'm saying, a 5-point gap. So you've got an 8 to 1 shot at winning, but you're getting 10 to 1 on your money. So you're getting an overlay, and that's the kind of thing that you have to look at. Is that kind of the way you do it as well?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I do arbitrage a lot, particularly with live betting. It's kind of
absolutely
live hedging, where if you, for example, take the under in a game in any sport, and it starts off very slow. You have no points, or maybe they're not on pace, and you see the live line drop like 10 points. College basketball total opens up at 150, and the live line is 135. If you bet the over 135, you have a 15-point middle.
Right.
That's arbitrage.
Yep. There you go. So now. Do you have software that searches out ARB bets, or do you do it yourself?
Searches out? No. However, I do have an ARB calculator which helps me calculate how much money I should put on both sides. But when it comes to actually finding arbitrage, that's mostly just stuff that I do personally, going through lines for hours on end at times.
And we should say, before everybody gets too excited about it, that used to be a lot more opportunities for arbitrage. They've figured that out. The books, I think, coordinate a little better than they used to. Of course, a lot of them they've consolidated, so they're owned by fewer and fewer companies.
Yeah.
So this was a great thing to do. 10 years ago, there was a ton of opportunities. Even 5 years ago, there was still a lot. Today, they're still out there, but you have to search a lot harder.
Well, that's why, for example, for the draft, I'm personally circulating between roughly 3 or 4 books. The more books you have, the more likely you are to find arbitrage, because one book might have one specific player, one specific team valued more than another book. And that way you can find some discrepancies between. Even though arbitrage is not as common as it used to be because books are smarter about it, it's always available in live betting.
Right, that's absolutely true. And especially if you're a game you're watching, you get a feel for it. Like you're saying in college basketball, maybe a team is cold early from 3-point land, but they're still chunking them up there. They're going to get hot. Certainly worth a little sniff there as far as arbitrage go. And I might add, the best tip, if you want to be a successful arbitrage player, is get out of the United States and open up your options as far as offshore books go.
Yeah, I know it's very common in tennis, I believe, in England or in Europe is very common with arbitrage stuff. But I know that one reason why that could be important today is because of the fact that BetOnline did announce that they are going to be doing live draft props for some positions. So hypothetically speaking, if you take the over on one prospect and then it's approaching that number and he's still not picked yet, you might get an adjusted number and be able to take an over. So for example, or an under. So for example, if you take, let's just say, for example, CeeDee Lamb over 12 and a half, and it's currently the 11th pick, and you see a sportsbook update a new line over or under 14 and a half, you can take a live under 14 and a half, and then you win if it lands on 13 or 14.
Try to hit that 13 or 14. Exactly
So
right.
keep that in mind for draft props. Some books offer live draft props now.
There you go. And it is a kind of a way. It's also a way to mitigate your loss.
Yeah.
Even if you don't hit your ARB, you can still get out of your bet and just lose the juice. So, yeah, it's definitely a good tool to have in your toolkit. If you're not looking at arbitrage, especially in a live situation, it is something that would definitely behoove you as a sports gambler to learn and to master that skill. It is a very, very good thing to have. And don't, Scott, can you tell us what a Polish middle is?
Honestly, I'm not actually fully aware of that one. Can you?
A Polish middle is when you try to buy out of a bet and you arb the wrong way.
Oh,
and you middle it and lose both.
I think it's probably a good thing that I didn't know that term, because that means I have not.
I'm sure you probably had it happen to you.
Yeah, I mean, it might have happened accidentally. Misclicks are going to happen, but that's why it's very important with regard to triple checking every bet you make. The worst thing you want to do, which has happened to everybody at least once, I'm sure it happened to you. Whether you want to admit it or not, where you want to take an under and you accidentally hit the over button, and then you realize it's too late. But at some point, I tend to notice when you accidentally hit the wrong button, you actually tend to win those bets a little bit more than you might think. Doesn't that happen? It seems like it always happens that way.
You're right. I would never admit that.
Yeah. But, it is what it is. It happens, specifically with live betting, because if you're going to do that before the game actually starts, you have time to triple check it because you take your bets in advance. When you're live betting, you know that a live total or a live spread is going to fluctuate every 20 seconds. It's a race against the clock.
And I have
to with live betting.
I have to tell you, that's one of the worst things. When I moved, I cut the cord. I got rid of cable, so I run everything through my computer. I had PlayStation View, which I thought was like the best for live sports. So much sports out there. I now have YouTube because PlayStation View stopped doing it. Anyway, the problem is you're way behind, so it's a lot harder to hit those live bets than it used to be.
Yes, and my advice to you on that is if you actually plan on watching a game for fun while betting, don't live bet because it'll literally spoil every single play that's happened before it happens.
Yes, absolutely true.
You're going to look up and it's going to be on the scoreboard. It's going to be like 60 to 52, and then live bet is going to say it's 60 to 57 timeout. And you're like, what happened here?
It's awful.
But that does happen. So if you are planning on watching games for fun, try to stay out of the live betting server. That's my advice.
Very good. So let's go back to your other point, Scott. Where's the steam coming from? How is steam occurring on players? Where are these rumors? Is it all guys? Is it guys like us? Is it guys just sitting and speculating and people start buying into that, retweeting it, things like that? Is it coming from anybody official? Where's the steam coming from?
Well, the truth is that it can come from a variety of places. Now, steam is available in different circumstances, particularly for the draft. Because the draft, nobody really knows. There's 32 teams. The only team who actually knows what they're going to be doing is the Bengals because they literally have the first pick. Everything else is kind of a domino reaction. So you might just hear theories or some thoughts on what teams are going to do. Maybe teams are intentionally trying to mislead other teams. You've seen that with regard to the Lions and the Giants. They're trying to shop around their pick, or they're claiming so. So they're advertising, this Justin Herbert guy is pretty good. They have no interest in taking him. They just want other teams to be enticed to actually trade up some of the resources to get him. Now, of course, some information which affects line movement is probably easier to notice in actual sporting events with regard to NBA games, NFL games, and injury reports, because you have official sources literally announcing what's going to happen and that this person's not going to play. Now, the draft is a lot harder because nobody really knows anything, and they're all just a bunch of theories on what they've heard from some people and where they think that somebody's going to go. So there's a lot of rumors.
Right.
And what you have with the draft is trying to find out which rumor's actually accurate and which rumor's a smokescreen. And that's
I find it hard to believe that some people, quote unquote, are actually talking to anybody from the press.
Well, I do think that ties into some of the leakage aspect of it. That's why I think most rumors, when I hear we talk to XGM, this is going to happen, I think that's all smokescreen. Because there's no way that a team who drafts sixth is going to give away their entire draft strategy.
No.
That's a blueprint on how to get fired. I don't really think that that's a very solid way to do it. Now, there are some ways around it where you might hear somebody like an Adam Schefter say, according to some anonymous GMs, this prospect is supposed to go higher than anticipated. Now, of course, you have the issue of, are they actually talking to anybody, or are they just claiming that they have anonymous sources that don't actually exist, which is the grimy gray area we live in today's media. Or you might say it's an anonymous source. What do they have to lose? They're probably telling the truth. So if you find anonymous sources, according to these high-profile, verified, checkmark Twitter people, then maybe they might hold a little bit more merit. But if you hear a quote from an actual GM saying, oh, yeah, we're doing X, Y, and Z, about 90% of the time they're not doing X, they're not doing Y, and they're most likely not doing Z. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, they're giving him the old okie doke is what they're doing.
That sounds about right, which is why I actually am a fan of what the Dolphins have been doing for the draft. People are thinking, oh my God, they're trading up for an offensive tackle. What are they doing? Who knows? The point is, if you have no idea what they're going to do, then none of the other teams know what they're going to do, and that's a successful smokescreen. So I actually give props to what the Dolphins have done, because nobody knows what they're going to do.
So, Scott, are the Dolphins going to trade up and take an offensive lineman?
No. I personally think that nobody's going to be trading up in the top 5. I think there's a difference between the Lions actively shopping the pick because they acknowledge that they're terrible and actually being willing to pull the trigger. We talked about this yesterday. I still think there's going to be fewer trades than people anticipate in the first round because of this unique draft virtual type of dynamic, which most of these 60-year-old guys aren't accustomed to. So I think you might see some teams – I know. I said 60, okay? You're like 30. You're like 35, so you got nothing to worry about on that. But no. But overall, I do think you're going to see less trades. And the Lions, even though some teams might trade out because they don't like a prospect available, with the number 3 pick, the Lions should find somebody that they like, and I think his name's Jeff Okudah. But that's just my personal opinion on that.
You think his name is who?
I think Jeff Okudah should be the 3rd pick in the draft.
The Lions?
I think the only reason why a team should trade down is because of the fact that they don't love any of the prospects in front of them. Now, some of you might say, well, what if they need multiple positions, they need more picks? Definitely. But if you fall in love with a prospect and you know he won't be available later on, I think you kind of have to pull the trigger. And I think the Dolphins know Tua's going to fall into our lap unless the Chargers jump us. So we can wait this one out. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's the only one I see as that's the most likely trade I see is the Dolphins panicking about what the Chargers are going to do and jumping in line 2 spots and trading up to.
You see that happening? Because I don't.
No, I like the under 5.5 trades in the first round. I think there will be. I agree with you. I think there'll be less movement as far as trades and deals go, and I do like the under 5.5. Yeah,
I actually updated my mock draft entirely yesterday, which I put on my Twitter at Rice Show Radio, and I actually had exactly 5. So I shifted a couple things around. I did notice, though, that on Bet Online, they did have the prop available. It's currently gone. It's off the board. But they had over-under 5.5 trades in round 1 of the draft. There was heavy steam to the over initially. It was at roughly minus 140 to the over, and now it's roughly minus 130 to the under. So there's been a lot of thoughts similar to what we've been talking about on how we expect to see fewer trades available because everyone's going to be in a very unique circumstance they're not accustomed to.
Absolutely. And speaking of Twitter, before we get rolling here, I know you had some Twitter excitement out there. You had a little retweet, had a tweet kind of blow up on you. Tell us what that was, Scott.
Well, I had a tweet that got yesterday 1,600 likes at this point. It's my new personal record, so I don't like to brag. Not actually. I personally don't really care. But it was ESPN, in their infinite wisdom, decided to start airing full first rounds of old drafts.
I saw that.
Nothing gets you more excited for the draft than watching 13 minutes in between picks when you already know what the pick is. Genius idea from the marketing department. I don't know who came up with that one. either or, they were airing the 2014 NFL Draft on ESPN2 yesterday at roughly 8 p.m., which is a true testament to the times that we're in and how they're showing an old draft at 8 p.m.
Right.
Now, I turned it on at roughly 8:20 for no reason. There's nothing on TV. I thought, you know what? Let me see what draft this is. Because, all the years blend together when you think of drafts. So I turn it on, and the first thing that I see is the Raiders just drafted Khalil Mack, right? And John Gruden was still in the commentator business, and he was on the panel on ESPN, right? So they asked Gruden what he thought about the Raiders taking Khalil Mack, and he said this, quote, "I'm shocked that the Raiders took Mack instead of Manziel. They must see something that I don't," end quote. Now, fast forward now, he's the GM, he's the head coach of the Raiders, and they shipped off Khalil Mack for a couple of draft picks.
Right.
So I threw that out there because I thought that quote was hilarious. That was the only 30 seconds I watched of the draft before I was required to change the channel after a bombshell quote like that. So I retweeted that quote word for word, and I got roughly around 1,500, 1,600 likes.
Nice.
So that's how that went. But that's an all-time quote.
Yeah,
Especially because he traded Khalil Mack, or he was partially responsible for getting rid of Khalil Mack roughly 3 years later. That's hilarious.
He hated Khalil Mack from Jump Street, basically.
Oh, yeah. He said he had issues with his coverage skills and how he pretty much had to be a defensive lineman throughout his entire 3-4 linebacker. And for that aspect, he was kind of right because he did turn into an elite pass rusher, and he does have, I'd say, average coverage skills. But, yeah, you say you think Manziel should go before him. That didn't age too well.
Yeah, and Manziel was on our list of all-time busts yesterday when we talked about.
Gruden, in a separate thing, said that he expects the Texans to take Manziel with the number 1 overall pick over Jadeveon Clowney. He said that. I actually retweeted that on my Twitter as well. He said publicly, "I think Manziel's the number 1 prospect. I would take him over Jadeveon Clowney. He'll provide a nice buzz for Houston." That's what he said.
Well,
now he's the head coach of a team.
Even the great ones miss, Scott.
Yes, that does happen. But that was the coup de grace for my draft excitement hype video stuff. Was seeing old ice cold Gruden takes on ESPN.
So give us some of your favorite of guys that might be dropping a little bit, where you might find some value in this year's draft.
Okay, so first of all, the first part I'm going to say, full disclaimer, I do have a couple of people from Wisconsin on this list. And I want to be clear, it's not because I'm biased for the Badgers. It's because I broadcasted some games while they were in school, so I got to see them in person. So I'm going to preface that by saying that I'm not just throwing people from Wisconsin on this list. It's because I've actually seen them play in person, and I like what I saw.
And Scott, you're a recent graduate of the University of Wisconsin, is that correct?
Yes, I graduated last May, and as time flies by, I can't believe that was roughly a year ago. That kind of
and what is your degree in?
My degree is in broadcast journalism, and I was a color commentator for the local student radio station.
Can you talk about why a guy from New York majoring in broadcast journalism did not go to Syracuse?
The main reason why was I lived in New York my entire life, and I kind of wanted to get out of there. However, instead of choosing the warm weathers of either California or Miami, I chose the -10-degree with wind chill winters of Wisconsin. And that was definitely an interesting time, to say the least.
And I'm sure they never canceled. You're one of those schools where they never canceled class, right?
We canceled it once my junior year because there was a polar –
Polar vortex?
Polar vortex. It was -45 outside, and we shut it down. So I can only imagine that's what it's like to live in Antarctica. But that was the extent of any type of cancellation I ever got from class. But anyway, during my free time, I lived across the street from the football stadium at Camp Randall. So I went to a decent amount of games, which brings me to my first sleeper. And it's actually an offensive lineman from Wisconsin. It's going to be Tyler Biadasz, who I'm actually a huge fan of at the center position. He was a borderline first-round pick last year, but he ended up getting hip surgery during the offseason, and he ended up playing in every game this past season. Didn't perform as well because he did have to go through a brief rehab period, probably came back before he should have, and his stock is currently sliding. He should be roughly a day 3 prospect, maybe a late day 2. And when healthy, he was a first-round prospect, and now he's supposed to go day 3. I hate comparing players to other players who went to the same school because I think it's a cop-out, but he reminds me a lot of Travis Frederick. Now, Travis Frederick just retired from the Dallas Cowboys, but he was an all-pro center, and I do think there are a lot of similarities between the two. So I actually think this should be a starter in the NFL at some point during the course of his career.
Okay, very good. Kind of an under the radar sleeper kind of offensive lineman. Hey Scott, what do you think of the running back situation with Jonathan Taylor? He's generally thought of to be the second running back that's off the board. Do you like him? I know we talked a little bit about him yesterday. Are you a big Jonathan Taylor being the best running back in the draft fan?
For me, yes, I actually had him on my list as well. I know that he's supposed to go in the second round, but realistically, if I think you're the best running back in the class and you're probably not going to be the first running back taken, then I think you're a sleeper. I think that's a fair assessment on that because I feel like you went later on than when you should have. Jonathan Taylor, he does have issues with regard to fumbling, and I am aware that those exist. I've seen that personally. But when it comes to pass catching, he also was a terrible receiver for his first couple of years. Actually did really well catching passes out of the backfield last year. Definitely worked on it during the offseason and definitely paid off. So now he's a more complete back. I mean, he ran a 4.39 40-yard dash, and he also had 17 bench press reps. He was a high school sprinter. So he has a lot of unique attributes. He can run in between the tackles. He can outrun defensive backs if he needs to on the outside. And I was trying to think of pro comparisons for all of the prospects that I was referring to for sleepers, and I realized he reminds me a lot of DeMarco Murray. I think there are a lot of similarities between the two. They both have a lot of speed, but they also are not afraid of contact in the trenches, and they both came into the NFL with some fumbling issues. They remind me a lot of each other. DeMarco Murray did retire, and he did have some durability issues, which Taylor does not have. But in terms of running style, I see a lot of similarities to DeMarco Murray.
All right, very good, very good. What else you got? Anything else to get everybody excited about?
Yes, I actually got how many more prospects do I have? I don't know how many you want me to go, or before you cut me off, I got 4 more prospects actually.
Give us a couple. Give us a couple more.
Okay, so this is an actual sleeper. It's supposed to go in the second round, but a lot of people haven't heard of him, and he's built up some steam over the last month or so. It's safety Jeremy Chin from an FCS school. He actually went to Southern Illinois. And some of you might be wondering, an FCS school, why should I care about him? He hasn't played anybody. And the reason why is because he's a projected second-round pick. He's an FCS player projected to go in the second round, so people definitely see something with him as they think that his size and speed can translate to the next level. Now, for the size and speed for a safety, he's 6'3", 221 pounds. He's a huge dude. He's a phenomenal athlete. He ran a 4.45 despite being 6'3", 221 pounds. So he's an athletic freak, and he also had 20 bench press reps with a 41-inch vertical. So he was phenomenal at the combine, and if you want to go based on family track record, he has pretty good genes, as he is actually the nephew of Hall of Fame safety Steve Atwater. So he has a lot of, good pedigree based on his family. Being the nephew of a Hall of Fame safety definitely helps when you're a safety in your own right.
He could hit a little bit.
Yeah, he can lay the boom a little bit. Now, in terms of comparisons, I actually found it a little bit tough. I thought about comparing him to a Deion Buchanan because I think some team might try to convert him to linebacker. But the more I actually watched him, the more he actually reminded me of Kerry Rhodes, former all-pro safety from the Jets and Cardinals. Very solid, not afraid to hit, not afraid to blitz. And he's also a pretty good tackling safety who could go into the box and wreak some havoc. So for me, he reminds me of Kerry Rhodes. I think he'll be a very solid safety in the NFL.
All right, more like along the Troy Polamalu line.
Well, he's significantly bigger. The thing that I was concerned about was because he was 6'3", and there are some rumors that he could potentially move to linebacker. I kind of wanted somebody who had the size and length to cover some tight ends while also being able to blitz the quarterback well and to even play linebacker in some packages. And Kerry Rhodes didn't really do that, but he was extremely versatile, and he wasn't afraid of contact, and I think that's somewhat of Chin's specialty. So
Yeah, in fact, I even saw a couple of mock drafts that had Chin sneaking into the first round.
it wouldn't surprise me. I think he's definitely a sleeper. I think he probably will go second round, but that's also part of the reason because of the other safety who I have as a sleeper who's projected to go a little bit before him, and that is actually Antoine Winfield Jr. out of Minnesota. I'm a huge fan of him. Now, if you look at his numbers, he had 7 interceptions last year, which is insane if you
That's
think
massive.
about that.
That's
I mean,
massive.
yeah, he led the FBS. He was an absolute ball hawk. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, how much of that was luck? Maybe he was just in the right place at the right time. And that is why he reminds me a lot of Tyrann Mathieu. And the reason why I say that, Tyrann Mathieu ended up returning punts, and he was, all over the ball almost every play. That's pretty much what Winfield did with Minnesota, where regardless of whether the ball was thrown middle of the field, sideline to sideline, Winfield seemed to always be in the right spot almost every play, which is why he had 7 interceptions. He was pretty much a ball magnet where he was always involved in a play, and you were kind of wondering, why don't they just throw it away from the guy? But he was always there. And that was something that I noticed a lot with Tyrann Mathieu in college. If you watched LSU back in the day, it always seemed like Tyrann Mathieu was involved in every single defensive snap, and I feel the same way about Winfield.
Yeah, and spending a season watching Mathieu at the pro level, you're absolutely right. There's some of the guys that just have that extra sense. They have that sixth sense about where the ball is going, and they're able to break on it. They're able to read the quarterback's eyes. They're able to read the motion, and they're able to get there just in time. And
now the all-time sense guy, of course, is Troy Polamalu. I mean, he's the all-time sense guy with his ability to just jump over the line of scrimmage on QB sneaks and all this other stuff. I'm not saying that Winfield's going to be a Polamalu type, but I do believe that he does have the instincts to be a very solid safety. And I wouldn't surprise me to see him record 4 interceptions or more in 1 or 2 seasons in his career. So I do think that there are some Mathieu comparisons. Hopefully he can stay a little bit healthier than Mathieu, but you saw what Mathieu could do when healthy, as he pretty much led the Chiefs secondary to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, very good. So
Well,
let's talk about go ahead, man.
I was going to say, before I go into some other sleepers, do you have anybody who caught your eye?
I really I've always been a big Dobbins fan. But I think that after watching the playoffs, I think I like Edwards-Helaire a lot better.
I'm an Edwards-Helaire guy also.
I was a little doubtful. In fact, I had Edwards-Helaire under in the semifinal game, and he just kept pounding and pounding and pounding. And he's one of these guys that just gets better as the game goes on.
You mean the championship game? Because he barely played. And that's an all-time bad beat with the under on that game. He had like 50 yards with 4 minutes to go, and he ran for another 50 yards.
I'm aware.
Yeah, I'm sorry to bring that up, but I know he barely played against Oklahoma. So
you're right. That was the championship game. I done my best to block that out of my mind. But yeah, we had him.
No, Hilaire's good. Build-wise, he reminds me a little bit of like a Mark Ingram hybrid with a Maurice Jones-Drew type. I see some type of similarities there.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's that's not a bad comp at all. It's really yeah, I could absolutely see that. That's very good.
I mean, I have a couple more prospects. I don't know if you want me to go into all of them or that's enough. But...
Oh, give me a couple more real quick.
Okay.
They're looking for bets.
Yeah. So this one is probably my biggest sleeper of the draft. Not in terms of if I think he's going to be a phenomenal pro, but I think the upside's too huge for where he's projected to go. And I'm going to try not to butcher his last name. I apologize in advance. It's tight end Albert Okwuegbunam from Missouri.
Yeah, just don't do it. Even in Mizzou, we call him Alberto.
Yes, but I believe you know who I'm talking about. And I think I did a pretty good job with that pronunciation.
Not bad at all.
I spelled it out phonics style to try to help me out with that. So I'm hoping it worked out. But in terms of athleticism, he's supposed to be roughly a 4th or a 5th rounder, maybe even later. Based on athleticism alone, I have to include him on this list. I mean, he's a ridiculous athlete. There's no way around it. I mean, you look at him, and you look at Alberto, and he ran a 4.49 40-yard dash as a tight end, which is ridiculous, of course. He has
Right.
pretty good hands. Now, he has an issue with blocking. He's not the greatest blocker in the world, but he reminds me a lot of Evan Ingram when he came out of Ole Miss. I just see him as being an exclusive pass catcher. Can he maybe develop some run blocking? Probably not, but maybe he might turn into a mediocre blocker. But at the end of the day, you see him on one-on-one coverage by the goal line, and you kind of have to throw to him. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, and I'll tell you the problem with Alberto. He's an injury guy.
So is Evan Ingram.
He's struggled with injuries throughout his career, and I know that I know without the injury background that he had, he would definitely be.
He might be a second rounder.
Yeah, I was going to say first 3 rounds for sure. That's a great one, and I was stunned when I started reading a little bit about Alberto and about how little he was regarded.
Like, oh yeah, he's supposed to go sixth or like fifth or. I'm like, he ran a 4.4. Look, what are you even talking about?
Right. I think some team's going to get a steal if they can keep him healthy.
I mean, that's the one thing though about the draft that people realize but don't want to fully admit. Whether or not you think your team got the right guy, nobody knows if somebody's going to actually be able to become a very solid NFL player. It's all based on upside and whether or not they believe the coaching staff can mold the current abilities of a given player to fit their system and to be productive. So based on that, even if one player has flaws, pretty much every prospect, first round all the way to 7th round, has flaws. The only difference is the quantity and how huge the flaws are. But if you're looking at a tight end in the 5th round, most of the time that means you're looking for a special teamer anyway who probably won't contribute. So why would you not take the athletic specimen in the 5th round who can potentially be a massive red zone threat?
Yeah, agreed.
So I think he's a huge sleeper.
Yeah, that's a great one, and that is a.
Do you see the Ingram call? I'm sure you've seen a decent amount of Missouri football over the years.
I have seen a decent amount of Missouri football over the years.
Does he remind you at all of Ingram, or is that just me?
No, I can see that. I can see that. I'll tell you who he does remind me of. It's a bit of an old school guy. Is a Keith Jackson.
I can see that also.
And the Keith Jackson was a guy that played exclusively in the wishbone there at Oklahoma, and was the number 1 tight end coming. And he caught like 14 passes as a senior. I literally think he caught less than 20 passes as a senior, and yet he went on to have a very distinguished NFL career. So
that just reminds me of Calvin Johnson going to Georgia Tech for some reason and then being number 1 receiver. I don't know why you go to a triple option offense if you're the best receiver in college football, but that's a separate story. I don't know. But that's one thing that you also have to keep in mind is that most of these teams, even though they might love one guy because they interviewed well or because of, I don't know, some stuff that they might have seen with regard to their, meetings and stuff like that, that doesn't change the fact that some prospect in the right system can blossom. And I think if you're looking for a guy in the 5th round, you pretty much just want them to do even one thing significantly well. And I think Albert's athleticism gives him some unique, definitely attraction when it comes to just other teams evaluating him.
And a lot of times guys get the moniker of being injury prone, and you kind of have to go back and see what are those injuries. I mean, is it somebody that has perennially bad knees? Is it somebody that's going to have knee problems throughout their career? Or is one of those injuries, a broken arm where, he landed wrong?
Even with the knee injuries, nobody really knows if one knee injury is a fluke or if it's something that's going to happen over and over again. I mean, that's actually one reason I wasn't that high on Todd Gurley when he came out of college from Georgia. And I know that I looked like an idiot for the first 4 years of his career because he was unbelievable. But he had serious knee issues at Georgia, and a lot of people just seemed to go, oh, that's one time, no big deal. And he got injured all the time. And that just happens. But then you also have some other people, like Deshaun Watson, for example, who tore his ACL in college. He tore his ACL earlier on in the pros, and he's been healthy ever since. So nobody really knows. Based on injury prone, Gronk's technically injury prone, and he's the greatest tight end of all time.
Is he though?
I know you're a Tony Gonzalez guy. I think you can argue 1A, 1B. Gronk's definitely in the conversation. and you could still argue that he's injury prone. That's all I mean.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, and it just goes to show what an inexact science that the drafting really is.
Nobody knows. It's all based on what they think they can do with a prospect.
And for every home run they hit, every team has swung and missed out on fantastic prospects and guys have slipped through the cracks. So let's talk a little bit about that throughout history. Scott, I know that you put together a list. You concentrated more on the 21st century, where I sprinkled in some guys that are kind of old school. So let's start with a bang, Scott. What is the greatest whiff of all time? What player? And we may agree on this. I think probably.
One thing, since we didn't actually specify what exactly we were looking for, do you include undrafted players or?
I had a separate list for those.
I put that in the honorable mention. I had to throw Antonio Gates on there. That was one of my honorable mentions because I did 2000 onward. Antonio Gates has to be there for including undrafted players.
Right.
Now, in terms of my number one, of course we're going to agree it's Tom Brady.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's no way it can't be Tom Brady. I mean, that's just a given.
Tom Brady in which round, Scott?
I believe he went 199th overall. Did you ever hear that? Tom Brady went 199th overall? I feel like I've never heard that before.
I believe I've heard that mentioned once or twice. Yeah, the sixth round. He went coming out of Michigan there. He went in the sixth round, the 199th pick.
Shout out to Drew Henson. Shout out to him in his NFL career.
Oh man, and that's something else that's fun is to go back and look at the players that were taken in front of him.
But he was also looking at baseball. I don't know the Yankees were interested in him, and he might have actually been on a roster, I think.
So, okay, now here's one for me. Now, and we didn't really define what a whiff is. So, for me, Patrick Mahomes as the 10 spot, I think qualifies for this list. And even though he was a first rounder, he went with the 10th pick.
You're saying that because Trubisky went number one.
Right, and and I know that I just torture Bears fans with this every time we talk about the Bears. The Bears traded a third and a fourth to move up to Jake Trubisky, and Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs traded. Now they did give a first round pick for the next draft, and a third in the present draft. They gave that to Buffalo to move up from 27th to 10th to take Pat Mahomes, and it was one of the greatest draft steals of all time, in my opinion.
Well, I think you can make the argument about any quarterback, whether it's Brady, Montana, or Mahomes. If you don't go number one and you're on pace or you're in the conversation for being the best quarterback of all time, then I feel like you're automatically a steal. But you can argue that Peyton Manning was a steal at 2. No, it wasn't because he went 1 instead of Ryan Leaf. You know what I mean? Where you can just look at and say, oh, this guy went before him, and this guy's an all-time great, so technically he's a steal. Can't you make that argument?
But, but back in the day, I remember that draft, and it was a very, very controversial thing about who was going to go first, whether it was going to be Manning or Leaf. It wasn't a slam dunk. There was a lot of there was a lot of Leaf heat, if you will, a lot of Leaf steam on Ryan Leaf, and it was a very, very up until the last minute, you didn't know which way it was going to go. And I know that seems ridiculous now, but yeah, it was a coin flip.
Yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind for mock drafts and everything. Just because Kuiper or McShay says that your team is going to take a player doesn't mean they're actually going to take that player. If you look at most mock drafts are fun to look at so you can fantasize about your team taking a given player. Nobody knows anything. You'll learn that as you go through. You might think they know stuff because they watch a ton of film. No one knows. A GM might wake up one morning and love one prospect that he hated 2 days ago. Nobody knows.
No, it's not Joe Lunardi in the
bracketology
tournament where somebody's going to get everyone right.
It's not a bracketology situation.
It's
almost impossible.
The mock draft, it's got mock right in the name.
I think it's harder to get the entire first round of the NFL draft correct than it is to get a perfect bracket in March Madness. Now, I don't have any proof on that based on math, but at least you know the matchups in March Madness. Any team could trade up to any spot, and then your whole mock draft goes out the window.
I think the only thing those have in common is neither one of them have ever happened.
Yes, Maybe a perfect bracket, maybe a while back if you get all 4 1 seeds in the final 4, maybe. But I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one.
Because you always hear when you enter these contests, you always hear that it's 116 quadrillion to 1 of hitting the. But that's not exactly accurate because you're looking at everything as a perfect 50-50 proposition.
And it's not. You got a 116. Your favorite to win roughly 99.
Right. So yes, you see those extraordinary numbers, and it's a little.
It went from impossible to impossible. That's basically how the odds
good
change.
news, you got a little better odds than that.
Yeah.
Scott, what's the greatest whiff on a Wisconsin player?
That's honestly a tough one. For Wisconsin, I mean, based on that logic you made with Mahomes, you could argue J.J. Watt. I mean, you can make that same argument. How based on how dominant he was, he should have went, earlier. If you want to look at recent memory, I think T.J. Watt's a huge sleeper. He went in the 20s, and he's an unbelievable defensive lineman.
Oh, Scott, I threw you a softball, buddy.
Honestly, you kind of caught me off guard on that one. I mean, Russell Wilson was where I had my number two one, but it's also tricky because he was only at Wisconsin for 1 year and he was at NC State for the earlier part of his career. I had Russell Wilson as my number 2. I know it's premature. I still think when Wilson retires, he's going to be the most underrated quarterback of all time.
I was at the preseason game.
I didn't forget about Russell Wilson. I don't know what you thought you had me there. I was mentioning other people. Wilson was a given. I had him on my list.
Okay. All right. No, I believe you. I was at that preseason game. That was in Kansas City where Russell Wilson went nuts against the Chiefs in preseason. And I think that really opened a lot of eyes because they had brought in
shout out to Matt Flynn.
Yeah, the cat from way to remember his name, the cat from Green Bay.
Of course, he threw 6 touchdowns in one game, and people thought he was the greatest quarterback to whatever. Then Seattle paid him. They realized, wait a second, who's this Russell Wilson guy?
Well, and that happened about a decade earlier with a kid named Scott Mitchell from Detroit.
That didn't pan out too well.
We went down to Miami. Yeah, got paid the big bucks and was just dreadful. Do you actually remember Scott Mitchell?
I'm a football historian. That was before my time, but I take pride in knowing a lot about sports.
Look at you, man. Yeah, there you go. Like almost like you got a degree in it or something.
I was in line to be in Sports Jeopardy when it was still on NBC Sports and the show folded.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was actually it was still preliminary stages, but it looked pretty promising. I was watching every episode and I was getting roughly 90% of the questions right.
You know what, my friend? Enjoy it because the memory starts to go.
Yeah, I'm hoping I got a decent amount of time left with that. But yeah, I know a lot of random stuff about random things about sports.
Right.
Didn't really apply to much else, but sports always stuck with me. I got sports and movie quotes. That's pretty much it.
No, we should put you on our virtual trivia team when we play.
I didn't know we had that, but I'm flattered you gave me that offer. But yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson, 3rd rounder though. Can you agree that for some reason, I don't know if it's true anymore, do you feel like he's still underrated? Because I do. It's weird. Yeah,
you don't really hear when you talk about the great quarterbacks these days. He's not generally mentioned in the first 3 to 5 guys.
I think he should.
But
he's unbelievable.
If you look at the stats, he certainly deserves to be mentioned.
Have you seen that offensive line for Seattle?
I know.
It's unbelievable what he's done. I don't really know how he does it. I think when he retires, he'll be the most underrated quarterback of all time. And I firmly believe that.
All right. Not even much Wisconsin bias there. No, that's
It wasn't even that was before I went to Wisconsin. I wasn't even a Wisconsin fan back then. It's just the truth. I mean, Seattle, if you look, Pete Carroll, I know, is a good coach and all this other stuff. Their offensive line has been one of the worst 10 units in the entire league for his entire career. And nobody really pays attention to it because Wilson can run around in circles and do whatever he wants.
Right. So let's talk about a few from this century, and then I'll do some all timers. Like from 2019, there was one that really stands out to me. Scott, you got anybody that recent from last year's draft who stands out as a great value pick?
I actually do not. My most recent sleeper I had was Russell Wilson. Because I think it's a little bit too early to call somebody an all-time sleeper if they've barely played more than 3 seasons in the league.
Okay.
So I didn't include them. Recent sleepers, I was always a Tyler Lockett guy. I thought he would be really good at Kansas State. I watched him play. He was a kick returner, punt returner as well. I thought he was a very solid prospect, and then Seattle scooped him with the third round. He's turned into a very solid receiver.
Right. I was looking at last year's draft with Gardner Minshew, who actually turned into a
Yes,
starter.
that's a good one also.
And a sixth round pick, unheralded. And again, you're right. We will put the caveat on that he most likely is not going to be a Hall of Famer. But if you can find a starting quarterback that you're going to build your franchise around for at least a couple 3 years in the sixth round, I think that's going to qualify as a sleeper for me.
Yeah. So do you want me to just go through my list quickly? I don't want to take this. I don't want this to take up too much time. Do you want me to just go through a list?
Hit it.
Okay. So Antonio Gates is my honorable undrafted mention.
Okay.
This is from 2000 onward. So Antonio Gates is my honorable mention. Number 8, I had Marquise Colston.
Okay.
Seventh rounder from 2006. He played in 146 games, all with the Saints. 72 touchdowns, roughly 10,000 yards receiving. 7th round pick. You gotta include him there. Number 7 was a 4th rounder, Darren Sproles, in 2005. He has the 6th most all-purpose yards in the history of the NFL. 4th round pick. So that's a pretty solid career there. Number 6, which I think is a huge sleeper that people don't talk about, Robert Mathis, 5th round pick from 2003. He won a Defensive Player of the Year award in 2013. So 5th round, that's pretty good. Number 5, some of these you can argue about the order. I got Frank Gore, 3rd rounder from 2005. He has the 3rd most rushing yards in the history of the NFL. He's still in the league, I believe. And, he's still around. That's kind of amazing for a running back, especially nowadays. But 3rd most rushing yards of all time, you got to put him there. Now, number 4 is the most polarizing figure on the list. I got Antonio Brown, 6th round pick from 2010.
I have him as well.
He's a 6th round pick, and he was arguably the best receiver in the league for, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
I said arguably. You can make some arguments with Julio and DeAndre and those guys. But he's got to be on there. Number 3, I got Richard Sherman, 5th rounder from 2011. The only reason why I have Sherman over Brown is because Sherman won a ring and Brown did not. So based on team success, Sherman did more to help his team win title. Of course, it's harder for a wide receiver to make that big of an impact to help his team win a Super Bowl. But either or, they're both going to be Hall of Famer. Brown, I don't even know if he'll be a Hall of Famer anymore. I don't even know, honestly. Sherman's a lock to be a Hall of Famer. I think that's a no-brainer. Brown probably should get in. I don't know if he will because of all the off-the-field issues. But then number 2, I got Russell Wilson. And number 1, I got Tom Brady.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. And I did not rank them in any particular order. I did go through the last couple of drafts. 2019, I had Gardner Minshew. 2018, 7th rounder, I like Justin Jackson, running back for San Diego for the Chargers. Not a superstar yet, but a real solid.
He was pretty good last year.
What's that?
He played limited last year when Gordon got injured, but he was actually
right. He's got 50 career carries, 352 yards. 2017, and this guy I'm surprised didn't make your list, Scott. 5th rounder George Kittle out of Iowa.
Of course, yeah. I forgot about Kittle. Yeah, that's good.
And then 2016 out of Mississippi State, Dak Prescott in the 4th round.
Yeah, I told you I wanted like a 4-year minimum sample size. So I had 2012, so I basically had a 7-year sample size.
Okay,
but then, Kittle's definitely going to be on there years from now.
And then that same draft they got in the 5th round, Baltimore drafted Matt Judon out of in the 5th round. There
that worked out pretty well also.
Yeah, standout defensive end for them. Now, some of my all-timers. One of my favorites is Mr. Irrelevant, who is the last pick in the draft, and Ryan Suckup was.
I was going to say Ryan Suckup.
Yeah, Mr. Irrelevant for the Chiefs, drafted in 2009, still kicking. 10 years later. That's a nice NFL career for him.
This is the golden opportunity, though. How did nobody in his entire career call him Mr. Relevant? That is an all-time nickname that nobody has ever called him before, and I'm not sure how that slipped through the cracks.
Mr. Relevant.
Isn't that a good nickname?
Very nice. That's not bad at all.
I don't know. That's my thought.
And of course, I've got Wilson. I've got Joe Montana on my list. Now, obviously, we're going back a little ways. He was the 82nd pick. He was a 3rd rounder coming out of Notre Dame.
He was arguably the greatest quarterback of all time before Brady showed up.
Yep. Geno Atkins, real good defensive tackle, Cincinnati. He was a 4th rounder. And Sherman and Brown and Brady were on my list. How about Shannon Sharp and Julian Edelman being taken in the 7th round?
Yeah, Edelman I could have thrown in there. I didn't include Edelman. I probably should have.
One of my all-timers is Roger Staubach, the 10th rounder in 1964, coming out of the Naval Academy. He was also drafted in I want to say the 26th round by the Kansas City Chiefs that same year. So
that is possible. Believe it or not, this might surprise you. I was not born yet for that draft.
yeah, I was around. I don't remember it. I'll say.
Fair enough.
Okay, so let's talk about
how are you around though? You're only 35. How does that?
Yeah, I know it's a trick. It's a trick of math. It's an algebra thing. I can't.
I got to learn that trick someday.
So let's talk about some undrafteds. There's a pretty good list of undrafted free agents. I've got probably the best ever for me. After Antonio,
I didn't do that many undrafted ones because I thought we weren't including them. I included Antonio Gates just because as an honorable mention.
Well,
you can run through your undrafted stuff.
I've got Priest Holmes.
Of course. I mean, Kansas City basically ran him to death, and then they did the same thing with Larry Johnson. But he was very good though. He won MVP, didn't he? Didn't he win MVP one year?
Yeah, he set the NFL record for touchdowns, and then it was eclipsed by Randy Moss a couple years later.
Yeah, and then Sean Alexander and LaDainian Tomlinson showed up.
Right.
Holmes did win MVP, I think.
Boy, that's a great question. I
think he did.
I
don't remember if your coach for that was Herm Edwards or Vermeil, though.
Priest Holmes was with. I think he was with Herm by then.
It could have been with both.
I think he was definitely with both.
Yeah.
Tony Romo,
of course,
coming out of Eastern Illinois.
Yep.
Wes Welker.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorites. And what's that?
Texas Tech.
Yeah, Texas Tech, right. And then a small college guy that picked up by the Saints in 2019 was wide receiver Deontay Harris, who made the Pro Bowl as a kick returner. And he came out of Scott. You know where he came from?
No, I did not.
Assumption College. How
did I not get Assumption College? I can't believe it. So I let everyone down. I'm sorry, everyone.
There you go. So we that's kind of a fun thing to do, and it's I really had to pull the reins back on not going and checking out greatest misses, like who was drafted before everybody, because you can go down that rabbit hole too about who they took instead of, like the quarterbacks that were taken in front of Brady, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, that's why you mentioned Mahomes, because of the fact that the Bears traded up for Trubisky. So that's why you brought that up.
I will never not bring that up. I will
of course.
never ever.
You have to bring it up. I mean, there's no way you can't bring that up. If you look at the rest of the class, Watson and Mahomes are on pace to be all-time great quarterbacks, and Trubisky probably shouldn't even be a starter right now.
If it was any consolation, I wanted the Chiefs to take Deshaun Watson.
It might hurt my credibility there, but I actually wrote an article grading all of the first-round picks from that draft. I gave the Bears an F for taking Trubisky. I gave the Texans an A+ for taking Watson.
Nice.
The Chiefs with Mahomes.
D?
I gave them a D+, I believe.
Okay.
I think it was a D+, and I'm pretty sure I used the quote, "They drafted the wrong guy, but at least they got the right position." And the reason why, ice cold take, was because I knew that Deshaun Watson was going to be a great player. And right. Watson was still on the board. So my logic for why I said that made sense. The problem is that Mahomes ended up being an all-time talent. And, I mean, the main reason why is because nobody from that air raid system
he was
never successful.
Guy. Right.
So I thought the Chiefs traded up and gave up a first round next year to draft somebody from a system who's never worked before, and Deshaun Watson's sitting right there off of a championship win.
Yep.
So I thought, they traded up. I like the aggressiveness, but how do you not take Watson there? And then it turned out I was right about Watson. I was right about Trubisky. I was dead wrong on Mahomes, but that's because of track record. I didn't really have much to go with.
I was too. I didn't like anybody coming out of Texas Tech. Anybody coming out of that air raid offense. I thought it was a junk offense that never would translate to the NFL.
I'm assuming you were also extremely high on Watson, though. I'm assuming.
I was. Mahomes had never beaten a team with a winning record in college. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. But that was, I mean, I blame that on the defense. I mean, if you just watch the Mahomes game against Oklahoma, where he went for 800 plus all-purpose yards, that's one of the stupidest stat lines I've ever heard in my life, and they still lost.
Yeah, they still lost.
So, it wasn't all his fault. I was aware of how good Mahomes was. But the point was that until I saw somebody in that system be successful, I didn't think it was worth the Chiefs trading 2 first-round picks to get him.
Yeah, I
That was my thought process at the time.
totally agree, buddy. Totally agree. All right, man.
Now I look like an idiot, so we'll see what happens there.
I hope everybody's had some fun this week. I know I have, kind of strolling down memory lane and taking a look at this year's draft as well. I assume you'll be watching tonight with bated breath, Scott.
Yes, I will. But before we actually conclude the video today, do you think we should run by all the props we have in the draft? I don't know if you have that open or if you just don't want to do that, but
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let me see if I can get to it. And I know a lot of them we had the same props. So while I am stalling for time trying to get that file open, go ahead and hit us with some.
All right. So I'll go through all my props here. I got a couple of units on Tua over 3.5 at plus 118 on DraftKings. I went through this the other day, but just to refresh the minds of all of our listeners. Of course, that one's not available anymore. Tua is now at roughly 4.5 or 5.5. I got that at plus 118 at 3.5 a month ago. Pretty much looks like free money, but you never know. I got Wirfs to be the first offensive lineman taken at plus 250 on DraftKings. It looked bleak yesterday. Now it's back to minus 140. So I don't really know what happened in the last 12 hours, but it looks pretty good for me. So we'll see what happens there. I got Simmons for a couple of units to be the Giants' first pick in the draft at plus 350. That's pretty much dead money. He's available at plus 500 now, but I took it and I gambled and I saw what happened. And then I got Okudah under 4.5 at plus 137 on DraftKings. It's roughly minus 120 now, minus 125. Nobody really knows, but we'll see. And then I got my middles. I got Patrick Quinn under 25.5 and over 20.5. I got Josh Jones over 25.5 and under 28.5. I got Swift over 26.5 and Georgia players over 1.5 in the first round. And I also have Jake Fromm, which I just added, over 61.5 and under 68.5. And those are all the plays I have on the draft.
All right, there you go. And I've got Chase Young to go number 2 to the Redskins at minus 450. I've got Okudah to the Lions at plus 130. I have the first 3-pick trifecta: Burrow number 1, Young number 2, Okudah number 3 at plus 250. Justin Herbert over 5.5 minus 135. Tua to the Dolphins plus 150. Tua over 3.5 minus 185. CD Lamb under 12.5 minus 170. Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle for the Georgia Bulldogs, over 10.5. And I've got the Pac-12 under 2.5 drafted in the first round as well. And then I took a real wild stab with Carolina taking an offensive player at plus 300. That's kind of my long shot right there.
Yeah, so one thing for a long shot, assuming this might still be up, BetOnline does have an option for the 3rd overall pick. The field is plus 350, where they listed out a couple of players, then you have the field. The field included all of the offensive linemen and Justin Herbert.
Okay.
And it's plus 350.
Okay.
So maybe if you wanted a little bit of a sprinkle on a wild card, plus 350 there for Herbert and the offensive lineman rumored to potentially go number 3 in a trade situation. Of course, you need Detroit to trade the pick. It's really not that bad for plus 350.
No, that's not a bad shot at all.
So maybe if you want to sprinkle there, I might put something on. I'm still trying to wait to see if I hear an official trade announced so I can potentially slam it immediately. Probably not going to happen, but I can hope to dream.
All right, very good. All right, guys. Well, we got you covered. 8 ways to Sunday, as they say, and we should have a lot of fun. I know that everybody's excited about this. Is what is going to pass for a major live sporting event tonight, so I'm sure it will break all kinds of records as far as televising the draft goes. It will be it'll be something to see. And then, Scott, we're going to play a waiting game, and we have nothing else on the agenda for any other of the major sports. So
yes, but we are going to have a lot of fun time recapping. We can do a winners losers thing with Dave tomorrow for the first round of the draft, just based on what we thought of some picks. Of course, we're going to ask him about all of the information regarding how the book's made out, everything like that, and we will find out all that information for you. But if you want us to, I mean, honestly, if your team screws up in the first round today, we will probably let you know about it tomorrow. So just a warning there. If you get triggered easily and you know your team screwed up, you might want to fast forward through some parts of the video tomorrow. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. That should be fun tomorrow. We've got Dave Mason. He's the official. What is his official title over there at Bet Online, Scott?
He's got a ton of titles, but as far as I just refer to him being from Bet Online because he's kind of a jack of all trades over there.
Yeah, he's an official mucky muck over at Bet Online. So Dave will be joining us tomorrow, and then once again on Saturday we're going to have cornerback, safety, jack of all trades, special team player extraordinaire JT Gray on from the New Orleans Saints with Winning Willie. So that'll be fun. And then, Scott, it's kind of a crapshoot from there on out. So if anybody out there listening, they've got any show ideas, anything that they want to see covered, want to see us talk about, put in the comments section. We'll
Russian table tennis.
If you could watch it, I would bet on table tennis. You know that I was actually a nationally ranked table tennis player as a junior.
Really? I did not know that. I dabble a bit in table tennis, but I'm assuming you probably could have destroyed me back in the day.
Absolutely. I went to the Nationals 1976 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and
nice.
It was a lot of fun. It was that's all we did when I was a kid. That's all we did was play table tennis. Played in the basement. Then we ended up joining a table tennis club here locally. Played in leagues. It was a thing. It was a thing. Spent a lot of money.
Table tennis is the most underrated sport when it comes to building up a sweat.
Oh yeah. It's
my opinion. People won't believe me, and people might think that I might just be out of shape. If you go up against a really good table tennis player, it's a war. People don't realize that.
Yeah, I would. I mean, it was a great equalizer between the ages. Because as a 14, 15-year-old kid, I just used to abuse guys that would come down to the club that played in their basement and thought they were pretty good. And, we would laugh at those guys. Of course, we had fantastic equipment. We were spending a lot of money on bats, because you don't call it a paddle, by the way.
Yeah. So after this Corona thing blows over, are we flying you to Russia to compete, or what exactly are we doing?
We're not. We
are not. You are officially retired. You heard
Although me. I'll tell you what, at my age and size, if there was like table tennis tables in bars, I could still hustle a lot of money. I could still go in and make money playing table tennis.
So if you see a table tennis table at a local bar and you see Scott Steen, don't play him for money.
Don't do it.
I'd give you.
It's don't play the old blind fat man because he's better than you think. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, buddy. Good enough. I don't even have to ask you about movies because we got draft tonight, baby. We're gonna have some fun.
I'm gonna look through some live draft props with Bet Online. Hopefully, I'll find something. But overall, it seems like we're both rooting for Okudah to go 3 to the Lions, and hopefully that happens. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you going to be throwing anything out on Twitter, Scott? Are you going to be tweeting anything?
Probably. I have a very nice meme prepared involving a reaction for a bad draft pick. I'm just waiting for one team to screw up. So you should see something on my Twitter tonight. I already got the blueprints prepared for it. I just need the audio of the music with Roger Goodell saying, with the blank blank pick, this team selects blank. And then you'll have a reaction out of it. Should be pretty funny. I believe it's pretty funny. We'll see.
Outstanding. All right, don't forget.
You gotta troll people if they make a bad pick. It comes with the territory on Twitter.
Yeah, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and follow Winners. It's Winners Winers. It's at Winners Winers on Twitter. He is at Reichel Radio. I am at Steamroller. Give us a follow there on the Twitterverse, and we should have some hot takes on tonight's draft. So, all right, buddy. Have a great day. As always, everybody, we thank you for watching. We thank you for tuning in. You know what I say. Everybody stay safe, stay well, stay home. We're going to get through it. We're going to have sports out the other side sooner rather than later, he said optimistically. And but until then, we've got the NFL draft. Should be a lot of fun tonight. Scott, any last words?
No. I hope everyone and their respective teams drafts the players they want. with the exception of maybe the Eagles and the Giants, but that's a separate story. No, but overall, I'm looking forward to this experience. People gave Goodell a little bit of flack when it came to actually hosting the draft and not delaying it. I think all of us are thrilled he didn't move it at all. We finally have something to look forward to. Gives up some optimism with regard to sports in the future. And I'm looking forward to waiting 8 minutes in between picks, for about 3 hours. So We'll see what happens there.
Couldn't be more thrilling. All right. For my partner, Scott Reichel, I am Scott Steen. We are winnersandwhiners.com. Make sure you check us out. As always, great content over at winnersandwhiners.com. Some good last-minute articles on the draft. A lot of good stuff on esports from Winning Willie. He's making money over there on the esports, Scott. We might have to look into that.
Potentially. First, I gotta probably learn how to play it, and then I'll figure it out.
I understand.
It's
All
weird
right, guys.
if you're watching an event and you just go, "Oh, he's doing the thing." I'm like, "Oh my god, he's doing that thing! I can't believe it. What is he talking about?" No, you can't watch it that way.
No,
I just can't do it.
No, you can just pick up your money at the end of the game.
We will ask Willie for a crash course at some point and come back experts. So we'll see how that works out.
Absolutely. All right, you guys. We will see you tomorrow with Dave Mason of Bet Online. Should be fun, and we'll have a blast. We'll talk all about the draft tomorrow. Until then, I'm Scott Steen. He is Scott Reichel. You guys, everybody, take care. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.